The planet Zarian 5 was quiet, almost too quiet. The kind of quiet that made Jarek's fingers tighten around the controls of his scout ship. He had been flying low over the ruined colonies for hours, scanning the landscape for signs of life. The aliens had come fast and fierce, leaving scorched cities and abandoned settlements in their wake. Human colonists were either gone or hiding, and Jarek's mission was simple: find survivors and report back. He had flown over crumbling towers, half-buried vehicles, and fields scorched by alien plasma. The air was thick with dust and smoke, and a bitter wind carried the faint smell of burned electronics. Jarek had seen enough destruction to last a lifetime, but he could not leave. Not when there was a chance someone had survived. A faint movement caught his eye. At first he thought it was a trick of the sun bouncing off twisted metal. But no, he could see it now. A small figure huddled behind the remains of a broken transport vehicle. Jarek's heart leapt. Human or... he murmured to himself. He adjusted the scope on his visor. It wasn't a human. The figure was small, almost childlike, with pale blue skin and large, expressive violet eyes that flickered with fear. Its hair shimmered like liquid silver under the dim sunlight. Jarek froze, knowing immediately that this was no ordinary survivor. This was an alien, one he had never seen before. He weighed his options quickly. The alien patrols could be anywhere. Stopping now might mean drawing attention. Yet something inside him urged him forward. The alien girl, because that's what she looked like, was injured. She had a deep gash along her arm, and her breathing was shallow and uneven. Jarek's hand hovered over the communicator. Command. I found a life form, not human, injured, requesting extraction. Static answered him. Scout, proceed with caution. Do not engage unknown life forms unless necessary. Jarek clenched his jaw. He didn't need permission. Saving lives wasn't optional for him. Not ever. He touched down lightly behind a pile of rubble, keeping the ship's engine noise low. The alien girl flinched, her violet eyes widening. She looked terrified, almost as if she expected him to attack. Jarek held his hands up slowly, palms open. I'm not going to hurt you, he said in a calm voice, hoping the universal tones of reassurance would carry. My name is Jarek. I'm here to help. The girl didn't respond. Instead, she curled into herself, hugging her knees. Blood ran down her arm and dripped onto the dusty ground. Jarek knew he had to act fast. He pulled out his med kit from the side pouch of his suit, keeping his movements deliberate and slow. Here, he said softly, offering a small packet of antiseptic. This will help. It won't hurt. Her eyes darted to the packet, then back to him. Slowly, with hesitant trust, she reached out and took it. Jarek smiled gently. Small victories mattered in moments like this. The sound of distant gunfire, or rather, alien plasma weapons, echoed across the valley. Jarek's head snapped toward the noise. The patrols were close. Too close, he needed to move, and fast. Can you walk? He asked. The girl shook her head. Tears streaked her pale cheeks. Jarek crouched beside her, carefully lifting her into his arms. She flinched but didn't resist. Jarek adjusted her weight, holding her securely as he ran toward his scout ship. Every step was calculated. The ground was uneven, littered with debris, but he didn't stumble. Not once. When he reached the ship, he glanced over his shoulder. A squad of alien drones hovered in the distance, scanning for movement. Jarek's heart raced, but he didn't panic. He never panicked. Not when a life was at stake. The girl whimpered, softly, and he whispered to her, It's okay. You're safe now. I've got you. He set her gently inside the small cabin and strapped her in. Her eyes were wide with fear, but there was a flicker of curiosity too. She studied him as he checked the ship's systems. Jarek keyed the comms. Command, I've secured the life form, initiating emergency takeoff. The engines roared as the ship lifted off the ground, dust and debris swirling in their wake. Jarek kept one eye on the girl. She was trembling, not from the cold, but from fear and pain. He poured some water into a small container and offered it to her. She hesitated, then sipped slowly, her eyes never leaving his. Hours passed as they flew over the desolate landscape. Jarek stayed focused on navigation, but he also kept talking to her. Names mattered, stories mattered. He wanted her to know that humans were capable of kindness even if she had never experienced it before. "I'm going to get you to a safe place," he said softly. "No one will hurt you there. You'll have food, medicine, people who care." The girl's lips trembled and she whispered something in a language Jarek didn't understand. He didn't need to know the words to understand the meaning. Gratitude, fear, hope. The planet stretched below them, a mixture of jagged mountains, scorched plains, and ruined cities. Jarek had seen destruction before, but nothing like this. He wondered what had driven the aliens to attack so fiercely. Power? Fear? Or something else entirely? He didn't have answers yet. He only knew what mattered. Keeping her alive. Suddenly, a sharp alarm sounded from the ship's sensors. Multiple signatures were approaching fast, alien fighters closing in on their position. Jarek's hands moved instinctively, adjusting the flight path, dodging obstacles, and preparing the ship's limited defense systems. The girl gasped, clutching at his arm. "It's okay," he said, more to convince himself than her. "Stay down, don't look at them." Laser blasts streaked past the ship, sending sparks against the hull. Jarek's mind raced. The ship was fast, but the aliens were relentless. He adjusted speed and trajectory, weaving through the rocky canyons below. "Hold on," he shouted, gripping the controls tightly. He felt the ship shudder as a blast grazed the hull, but it held. The girl's eyes were wide, reflecting the fiery streaks of laser light outside. "Why are they chasing us?" she whispered. "Because they don't want anyone to survive," Jarek said simply. "But we're not giving up." He pushed the ship harder, maneuvering through narrow passes that only a human pilot could navigate with such precision. The aliens hesitated, their drones too large to follow him through the tight canyons. Jarek allowed himself a moment of relief. Finally, the landscape opened to a plateau and he spotted an abandoned settlement. It was small, but it would do for now. A place to hide, to rest, and to regroup. He landed the ship carefully, engines quieted, and immediately checked the girl. "Ainor said, you hurt worse?" he asked. She shook her head, but the fear in her eyes remained. Jarek set about tending her wounds properly this time, using advanced med gel and bandages. She watched, fascinated by his skill and gentleness. As night fell, the two sat together, inside the cabin. The stars outside seemed brighter than Jarek had ever seen. He glanced at the girl, her small frame curled up for warmth. She was safe for now. "I know you must think humans are dangerous," he said softly. "But not all of us are. Some of us, and we fight to protect." The girl's eyes met his, and for the first time Jarek saw a flicker of trust. She didn't speak, but she reached out and placed a small hand on his arm. It was a gesture that transcended language, a silent acknowledgement of connection, of hope. Jarek leaned back, exhausted, but determined. This was only the beginning. The aliens would come again and the journey ahead would be dangerous. But for now, he had done what he could. He had saved a life. And in the quiet of that ruined world, amid destruction and fear, a small spark of trust had been kindled between human and alien. The plateau was quiet, but the silence felt heavy. Jarek knew better than to trust it. Alien patrols were relentless, and every shadow could hide a deadly threat. He had saved the girl, Lyra, as she had finally whispered her name, but now he had to keep her alive. He had patched her wounds, given her water, and even managed a small meal from the rations he carried, but her arm was badly hurt and she couldn't walk far. That meant they would have to move carefully, slowly, and that made them vulnerable. Jarek studied the horizon from the cabin window. The sun was dipping below jagged mountains, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. Somewhere out there, the alien drones were searching, scanning, looking for any sign of life. "We can't stay here," Jarek said, his voice low but firm. "They'll find us if we do." Lyra nodded slightly, her violet eyes wide with fear. She was learning slowly to trust him. But trust didn't erase terror. Jarek knew he had to keep her calm, or she might panic at the worst possible moment. He packed the essentials: a small med kit, water, some food rations, and a compact blaster for emergencies. The ship's fuel was enough for short bursts, but he couldn't rely on it for long-distance travel. They had to move on foot. "Can you walk?" he asked again, gently. Lyra shook her head. Jarek lifted her again, careful to avoid pressure on her wounded arm. She rested her head on his shoulder, trembling. Jarek's jaw tightened. This was going to be harder than he thought. The first sign of danger came as a faint hum in the distance, the sound of alien hovercraft engines. Jarek's ears twitched. He set Lyra down behind a boulder just as the hovercraft appeared over the ridge. "They're fast," Jarek whispered. "Stay down. Don't move until I tell you." The hovercraft scanned the plateau with a searchlight. Sparks of alien energy weapons glinted on its hull, ready to fire. Jarek ducked behind the boulder with Lyra keeping low. He studied the patrol. There were 3 of them, scanning the terrain systematically. If they spotted even a shadow, they would fire. Jarek's mind raced. He couldn't outrun them in the open, but he could outsmart them. He looked around the rocky terrain. There were narrow canyons, jagged cliffs, and twisted metal debris scattered across the ground. It wasn't much, but it was enough. He had an idea. "Stay close to me," he said to Lyra. "And don't scream." She nodded, gripping his arm. Jarek moved silently, using the shadows to his advantage. He led her into a narrow canyon, forcing the hovercrafts to slow down. The patrol hesitated at the entrance, trying to determine if anyone had entered. Jarek held his breath. He knew that one mistake could get them both killed. "Go now," he whispered. He pushed Lyra forward while he set up a simple trap using debris and old wires from a ruined vehicle. The trap wasn't deadly, but it would create noise and confusion. When the hovercrafts finally entered the canyon, Jarek triggered the trap. Metal pieces clanged together, bouncing down the rocky slope. Sparks flew, and one of the alien drones swerved to avoid it. "Move!" Jarek shouted, pulling Lyra deeper into the canyon. The patrol fired, laser beams slicing through the air. Jarek dodged instinctively, using the canyon walls as cover. One beam grazed his shoulder, scorching the edge of his jacket. He didn't pause. Every second counted. Lyra stumbled but didn't fall. Jarek caught her quickly, whispering, "I've got you. Keep going." They ran through twisting paths, the canyon walls echoing the sounds of the alien patrol behind them. Jarek's legs ached, but adrenaline pushed him forward. He knew humans were not the fastest species, but their endurance and quick thinking often made up for it. Hours passed as they navigated the dangerous terrain. Lyra was exhausted, but she didn't complain. She had begun to understand something important. Humans fought not only with strength, but with ingenuity and determination. At one point, they reached a steep cliff overlooking a valley. Jarek paused, catching his breath and assessing their options. Below them, a thick forest stretched out, hiding countless paths and potential dangers, but it was also the only place where they could disappear from the patrol's sensors. "Hold on tight," he said, carefully lowering Lyra down the cliff face using a sturdy rope he had in his pack. He descended after her, keeping his eyes on the forest below. The patrol arrived at the cliff edge just as they disappeared into the trees. Hovercrafts hovered, scanning, but the canyon walls blocked their sensors. Jarek allowed himself a brief smile. The forest might be their only chance. Night fell, and the forest became a maze of shadows. Jarek moved cautiously, using sticks and rocks to mask their trail. Lyra clung to him, her small hand in his. He whispered stories as they walked. Tales of humans surviving impossible odds, of courage and hope in the darkest moments. "Humans are strange," she murmured in her lilting voice. "You fight, but you also help." Jarek smiled. "It's what we do. We fight to survive, yes, but we also fight to protect. That's what makes us humans." She thought about that silently. For the first time, she didn't feel completely alone. Suddenly, the sound of alien drones cut through the forest, a sharp, high-pitched whine that made both of them freeze. Jarek signaled for silence. He scanned the area and noticed the drones following a different path. It seemed they had lost the scent of humans and alien life from the canyon, but were determined to search every corner. Jarek whispered to Lyra, "We need a hiding place. Quickly." They found a hollow in the base of a massive tree. The entrance was small, almost invisible. Jarek helped Lyra inside and crouched beside her. The forest was alive with night sounds, rustling leaves, distant calls of unknown creatures, but they were safe for now. "Rest," he said softly. "We'll move again at first light. We can't stop for long." Lyra leaned against him, exhausted. Her breathing evened out, and for a moment, Jarek allowed himself to relax. But only for a moment. He knew the patrols would not give up easily. Humans were known for their stubbornness, but so were these aliens. Hours passed in silence. Jarek kept a small fire burning, careful not to reveal their position. He cleaned his weapons, checked the med kit, and made sure Lyra's injuries were stable. She stirred occasionally, mumbling in her language, but she seemed calmer now. When dawn broke, painting the forest in soft gold, Jarek was already moving. He knew the patrols would resume their search with fresh determination. He guided Lyra through hidden paths, using knowledge of terrain and human ingenuity to avoid traps and patrols. At one point, they had to cross a shallow river. Jarek carried Lyra across, watching for any alien sensors. He noticed movement in the trees. A patrol was approaching. He whispered, "Under the water. Hold your breath." They submerged themselves just as the patrols reached the riverbank. The water muffled the sound of their presence. Minutes felt like hours, but eventually the patrols moved on, missing them entirely. Lyra looked at him in awe. How did you know?" Jarek smiled, water dripping from his jacket. "We survive. We think. We adapt. That's humans." By midday, they reached a ruined settlement, a small cluster of buildings that had somehow survived the alien attack. Jarek examined it carefully. It was not perfect, but it offered shelter, food stores, and defensible positions. "This will do for now," he said. "We can rest and plan our next move." Lyra looked at him, a mixture of gratitude and admiration in her eyes. "You risked so much for me." Jarek shook his head. "Not just for you, for anyone who can't protect themselves. That's what humans do. We fight to survive, but we also fight for others. That's why we endure." As they settled into the ruins, Jarek kept watch, knowing the patrols would not give up. He also knew something else. The bond between him and Lyra had grown stronger. Trust had been established, and with trust came hope. The ruined settlement offered a brief moment of respite, but Jarek knew it would not last. Alien patrols were methodical, relentless, and they would soon scour every inch of the forest. He couldn't afford to rest for long, not while Lyra's life hung in the balance. He had patched her wounds and given her some food. Her arm was bandaged carefully, and for the first time since he found her, she seemed almost comfortable. But the tension in her violet eyes never fully left. Every rustle of leaves, every distant hum of alien engines reminded her that danger was never far. Jarek studied the settlement. Broken walls, scorched roofs, and collapsed buildings formed a natural barrier around them. He pointed to a half-standing warehouse. "We'll move there next," he said. "It's safer. We can hide, rest, and maybe figure out a plan." Lyra nodded but hesitated. They will find us," she whispered. "They might," Jarek admitted. "But we won't let them. Humans don't give up easily, especially when someone else's life is at stake." The sun had just begun to dip behind jagged cliffs when the first patrol arrived. Jarek spotted them before they could see him, hovering drones and armored walkers scanning methodically. He crouched behind a pile of rubble with Lyra pressed to his side. "They're here," he said quietly. "We need to move. Now." He lifted her carefully, and they darted from cover to cover. The alien patrol noticed them almost immediately. Red lights flashed across the forest, and the first laser beams cut through the evening air. "Hold on!" Jarek shouted, running faster than he thought possible. He had to keep Lyra safe no matter what. The first blast hit the ground inches from his boots, scorching the earth. Another streak of red energy came dangerously close to Lyra. Without thinking, Jarek pushed her behind him, using his own body as a shield. Pain seared his shoulder as a laser grazed him. He gritted his teeth and kept moving, zigzagging through, debris and trees making it harder for the patrol to aim. Lyra clung to him, trembling, but she didn't scream. Jarek's voice was steady. "Stay with me, you're safe, just keep moving." A drone fired again. This time, Jarek barely had time to react. He dove forward, taking the full force of the laser blast across his chest. The armor of his suit absorbed some of the damage, but he felt the heat burn through. Pain shot down his body and he stumbled, barely keeping Lyra from falling. "Jarek," she cried, gripping his arm. He forced himself to keep moving, using sheer willpower. Every step was agony, every breath a challenge, but he refused to stop. Humans could endure more than most species. It was in their nature to fight, to survive, to protect those who could not protect themselves. They reached a cluster of collapsed buildings. Jarek ducked behind a wall, panting heavily, feeling the warmth of blood running down his suit. Lyra peeked around him, eyes wide with horror. "They're coming," she whispered. "They won't take you," he said firmly, more to reassure himself than her. "Not while I'm alive." The drones advanced, moving with precision and intent. Jarek realized that the only way to give Lyra a chance to escape was to draw their attention toward himself. He looked at her, his expression soft but determined. "Go, now," he shouted. "Run to the warehouse. I'll hold them off." Lyra hesitated, fear written across her face. Jarek grabbed her shoulders gently. "Trust me. You can make it, you have to." Reluctantly, she ran, slipping between the shadows of ruined buildings. Jarek turned back to face the patrol. The drones focused on him immediately, sensing a human presence. Red beams cut through the air and Jarek raised his arms, using every ounce of his body to block and deflect where he could. One blast hit his leg, throwing him off balance. Another hit his shoulder. Pain exploded in every direction, but he stayed upright. Humans were not the fastest. Humans were not the strongest. But humans had courage, endurance, and the ability to act when all seemed lost. Jarek used his environment, ducking behind rubble, luring drones into corners where their larger size became a disadvantage. He kicked debris toward the drones, causing confusion. He rolled under low beams, using small fragments of rubble as cover. One drone fired too close and crashed into a broken wall, sparks flying. Jarek gritted his teeth, ignoring the burning pain in his suit and body. Every second he delayed the patrol was another second Lyra could gain. From a distance, he saw her emerging from the ruins, moving toward the warehouse. She stumbled once, but kept going. Jarek's chest burned with pain, but seeing her safe, pushed him forward. A drone hovered closer, aiming directly at him. Jarek took a deep breath, ignored the pain, and charged forward. He used a narrow passage between two collapsed buildings, forcing the drone to slow and swerve. The drone's beam missed him narrowly, slicing into the wall behind him. He rolled and stumbled to his feet, his vision blurry, pain stabbing through his chest, but he kept moving, shouting and waving, drawing every drone's attention toward himself. Finally, he saw Lyra reach the warehouse. She ducked inside and disappeared from view. Relief washed over him, but there was no time to rest. He had to make it appear as if he had also vanished, or at least delayed the patrol long enough for her to find cover. A drone fired a continuous beam, hitting the ground where Jarek had been. He jumped, narrowly avoiding the energy, and dove behind a wall. The blast tore a chunk from the rubble, sending debris flying. Dust and sparks filled the air, but Jarek remained focused. He couldn't fail. Not now. Minutes passed like hours. Each step, each breath, each heartbeat brought pain, but he endured. The aliens were relentless, but human determination was stronger. Humans adapted, humans survived, and humans protected. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the drone's movements became uncertain. Jarek had used every trick in the book: shadows, debris, rapid movement, and sheer unpredictability. The patrol hesitated, scanning the Yaar ruins for a sign of him. Jarek collapsed against a wall, breathing heavily, blood seeping through his armor. Every muscle screamed in protest, but he smiled grimly. Lyra was safe. The sun had set, leaving the ruins bathed in soft moonlight. Jarek pressed his hands against his chest, feeling the heat of burns and bruises. Pain would fade, but the knowledge that he had saved a life, especially one so innocent, would endure forever. Hours later, Lyra returned cautiously. She had circled back, trying to check if Jarek had survived. When she saw him leaning against the wall, battered but alive, tears welled in her eyes. You're alive," she whispered, almost in disbelief. Jarek smiled weakly, his breath ragged. "I told you, humans endure. We fight to protect." She knelt beside him, touching his shoulder gently. "You saved me. You risked your life. For me." Jarek shook his head. "Not just for you. For anyone who can't protect themselves. That's what we do. That's what makes us human." Lyra's eyes glistened with admiration and gratitude. She had seen human courage firsthand, not in stories, not in legend, but in the flesh. And she understood now that humans were special. Brave, determined, and willing to risk everything for others. The ruins were quiet once more. The patrol had retreated, unable to catch them this time. Jarek leaned back against the wall, feeling the warmth of the night wind and the soft sound of Lyra's breathing. "I think we're going to make it," he whispered, though he knew the journey ahead would be long and dangerous, but for now they had survived the worst. And in that moment, under the moonlit sky, a bond was forged. A bond born of trust, courage, and sacrifice. Lyra had seen the best of humanity, and Jarek had shown her that even in the darkest times hope could survive. The first light of dawn filtered through the jagged trees, casting long shadows across the ruins. Jarek was still leaning against the wall where he had collapsed the night before, his body aching from the burns, bruises, and fatigue. But for the first time, he allowed himself to breathe. Lyra was beside him, bandaging her own arm under his guidance, careful and deliberate. "You saved me," she whispered again, her violet eyes wide with awe. Why would you risk yourself like that?" Jarek smiled faintly. "Because someone had to. It's what humans do. We fight to protect. It doesn't matter who you are. Human, alien, friend, stranger. If someone is in danger, we step forward." Lyra nodded slowly, clearly pondering his words. She had grown up in a world where humans were often feared, where alien propaganda painted them as reckless and cruel. But now, after witnessing Jarek's courage, she felt a shift within herself. Humans were not just warriors. They were noble, compassionate, and brave beyond measure. The wind carried the faint hum of hovercrafts. Jarek froze, listening. The patrols had returned, but something was different. Their movements were hesitant, less coordinated than before. Something about the way they were scanning suggested confusion. Jarek realized that perhaps his distraction tactics had worked longer than expected. "Stay low," he whispered to Lyra, scanning the horizon. "We need to move. They'll eventually find us if we stay in one place." Lyra nodded and followed him through the broken settlement, careful to avoid the open ground. They moved with purpose, yet silently, until they reached a small hill that overlooked a partially destroyed city. From this vantage point, Jarek could see not only the patrol searching, but also faint movement elsewhere. "Wait. Look there," he said, pointing. "Those aren't human. Someone's moving toward the patrols." Lyra squinted. "Aliens?" she asked. "Yes," Jarek replied. "But not like the ones chasing us. These might be friendly, or at least curious." He observed as a group of alien figures approached, seemingly cautious and unarmed. They moved with careful precision, scanning the area but avoiding direct engagement with the patrols. Their uniforms were different, marked with insignia that Jarek didn't recognize immediately. Something about their movements suggested intelligence, observation, rather than aggression. Maybe they saw what happened? Lyra murmured. They saw you saving me? Jarek's eyes narrowed. Could be. We'll find out soon enough. But it means we have a chance to change things. He motioned for Lyra to follow him down the hill, leading her toward a safer path. As they walked, he explained how he intended to use the terrain to their advantage. The city was dangerous, filled with patrols and ruined structures, but it also offered hiding places and vantage points. Humans thrived in such situations, relying on ingenuity, strategy, and adaptability. Hours later, they reached the edge of a ruined plaza. From behind the broken walls, Jarek observed the approaching alien group. He realized they were trying to communicate with the patrols, but the patrols ignored them, focusing only on locating him and Lyra. This is it, Jarek said softly. We have to show them. Humans are different. Humans fight with honor. He stepped into view, his injuries still visible but his posture unbroken. Lyra stayed behind him, watching nervously. The patrols noticed them immediately, raising weapons and preparing to fire. Jarek raised his hand slowly. I am human, he said clearly, using the common interstellar language. I saved this child. I risked my life so she could survive. If you wish to attack, you will find humans do not fight only for themselves. We fight to protect others. The patrols hesitated. The approaching alien group stopped as well, observing silently. Jarek could feel their judgment, the careful calculation of whether to attack or retreat. Then something unexpected happened. One of the approaching aliens stepped forward, signaling the patrols to hold fire. Jarek recognized the gesture. It was an offer of truce, a call for observation. The patrols did not advance. They scanned him carefully, noting the burns, the bruises, and the clear evidence that he had protected someone else at great personal cost. Lyra's hand found his. They are listening, she whispered. Yes, Jarek said. But we need to show them more. Humans don't just talk. Humans act. Watch. From behind a pile of rubble, a patrol drone fired at a small creature scuttling nearby. Without hesitation, Jarek dove in front of it, deflecting the beam with a piece of metal he had picked up. Sparks flew and he staggered, but the action was enough. The approaching aliens took note, murmuring among themselves. They see it, Lyra said, awe in her voice. They see what you did, your courage. Jarek nodded. Humans are remarkable in ways others often underestimate. We endure, we adapt, we protect. That is why we survive. The alien observers approached cautiously, their eyes fixed on him. One of them, slightly taller than the rest, stepped forward and spoke in broken common. You, human, protect, child? Jarek nodded. Yes, she is innocent. She deserved a chance to live. I gave it. The alien hesitated, then lowered its weapon. A small signal was sent to the patrols, who slowly relaxed, their weapons lowering. Jarek could see them shift in their posture, the recognition that this human was not merely a fighter but a protector. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. You changed their minds, she whispered. Not just me, Jarek replied. Humans change minds with our actions, not words alone. You will see it again and again, Lyra. Courage, sacrifice, and protection. These are what define us. The taller alien approached closer, tilting its head. Why, human, fight like this? Risk life for other? Jarek looked at him, steady and unwavering. Because someone has to. Because doing the right thing matters. Because protecting the weak is worth more than fear, hate, or war. For a moment, silence fell over the plaza. Then the alien gave a subtle nod, a gesture of understanding and respect. The other observers followed suit, their weapons lowered, their stance less hostile. Lyra reached out to Jarek, holding his arm tightly. You saved more than me, she said softly. You saved respect. You saved hope. Jarek allowed himself a small smile. Humans can do that, he said quietly. We can inspire. We can endure. And we can protect. Over the next few hours, the group of observing aliens communicated with Jarek, learning from him about human ways of survival, protection, and courage. They shared information about the patrols, the hierarchy of their forces, and the culture that drove the attacks. Jarek listened carefully, absorbing everything he could, knowing that knowledge was as important as strength. By the time the sun was high in the sky, a new understanding had formed. The patrols, once aggressive and relentless, began to withdraw, guided by the orders of the observing aliens. They had witnessed human bravery and selflessness and could not ignore it. Lyra's expression was one of disbelief and awe. They respect you, she whispered. I didn't do it for respect, Jarek said. I did it because it was right. But respect? It's a side effect of courage and protection. That's the way humans work. We don't fight for glory. We fight for others. And that's what makes us remarkable. The alien observers now acted as guides, leading Jarek and Lyra safely out of the city. The patrols did not follow. They were unwilling to engage further after witnessing his actions. Jarek realized something profound. Humans were capable of changing hearts and minds through courage, selflessness, and the willingness to risk everything for others. As they walked through the forest with the aliens guiding them, Lyra finally spoke fully, her voice trembling but confident. I understand now. Humans are special. You are more than warriors. You are protectors. Jarek smiled, his chest still aching but his spirit strong. We are, he said, and one day the galaxy will see it, not through weapons, alone, but through our actions, our courage, and our hearts. By evening they reached a safe valley, far from the patrols. The observing aliens bid them farewell, offering supplies and guidance for the journey ahead. Lyra looked at Jarek, gratitude and admiration shining in her eyes. You saved me and more, she said softly. I will never forget this. I will tell my people, your people, what humans are capable of. Jarek placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Remember this, Lyra. Humans endure. Humans protect. And, when the time comes, humans inspire. That is what makes us more remarkable. As night fell over the valley, Jarek and Lyra camped under the stars. The wind was calm, the ruins far behind them, and for the first time, both felt hope. Hope that humans could survive, hope that humans could protect, and hope that one day the galaxy would see the true strength of humanity. Because humans, Jarek knew, were more than just survivors. Humans were protectors. Humans were remarkable. And through courage, selflessness, and determination, they could change the universe one life at a time. The valley stretched out before them, bathed in the warm light of morning. For the first time since the alien attack began, Jarek allowed himself to feel something beyond pain and fear. Hope. The patrols were gone, guided away by the alien observers, who now recognized the human capacity for courage and selflessness. Lyra, walking beside him, glanced at the distant hills with wide eyes. Her violet gaze sparkled with a mixture of relief and awe. We made it, she whispered. Yes, Jarek said, his voice calm but firm. We survived, and now we have a chance to make things better. They moved through the valley, carefully, keeping watch. Jarek's body was still battered from the last encounter, his suit scorched, muscles aching, and burns stinging, but he ignored the pain. Humans endured. It was not strength alone that carried them through, but determination, courage, and the will to protect others. You're amazing, Lyra said softly. The aliens. They saw you. You changed how they think about humans. Jarek shook his head. I didn't do it for them. I did it for you. For anyone who can't protect themselves. But yes, sometimes actions speak louder than words. And when others see what humans are capable of, they take notice. Lyra fell silent, contemplating his words. She had grown up hearing fear-driven stories about humans, stories that painted them as violent and reckless. But now she had seen firsthand that humans were more than that. They were brave. They were moral. They were capable of acts of selflessness that few could imagine. As they approached a small grove near a sparkling river, Jarek signaled for a rest. They sat under the shade of an ancient tree, listening to the soft sound of water flowing over stones. The valley was peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos they had endured. Jarek pulled out some rations and offered them to Lyra. She accepted, though hesitantly. She was still weak, still recovering from her wounds and the trauma of the chase. But with each bite, her strength returned. You know, Jarek said, breaking the silence. Humans don't just fight to survive. We fight to protect. And sometimes, that changes everything. Lyra looked at him, curiosity and admiration in her eyes. Everything? You mean, even alien minds? Jarek nodded. Yes. Courage and selflessness are universal. Even the fiercest. Enemies can respect them. Even the hardest hearts can change. That's the strength of humans. The day passed slowly. They traveled cautiously through the valley, avoiding open areas while moving toward higher ground where they could see the surrounding landscape. Every so often, Jarek paused, scanning for patrols or drones. The alien observers had provided guidance, but he remained vigilant. Humans relied not only on courage but also on awareness, strategy, and careful observation. By evening, they reached a ridge overlooking a distant city. Smoke still rose from some parts, evidence of the destruction that had occurred. But signs of recovery were evident too, alien workers clearing debris, repairing damaged structures, and tending to the wounded. Jarek smiled faintly. Progress, even slow, was beginning. Suddenly, movement caught Lyra's attention. Jarek, look, she whispered, pointing toward a group of alien figures approaching. Jarek's eyes narrowed. They were the same alien, observers who had first come to witness his courage. This time, however, they carried supplies, food, water, and med-gel for both Lyra and any humans they might encounter. One of the taller aliens stepped forward and spoke in careful common. Human courage saved life. We wish to help. Jarek nodded, accepting the supplies. Thank you, your help is appreciated. Humans always repay kindness with action. And sometime, friendship. Lyra watched as the aliens distributed the supplies, helping her regain her strength. She turned to Jarek, awe in her expression. They trust you. They respect you. You saved more than me, didn't you? Jarek smiled softly, feeling exhaustion but also pride. I didn't save them for respect. I saved you because it was the right thing to do. But yes, sometimes the right thing has wider consequences than we imagine. Night fell over the valley. The stars sparkled brightly, mirrored in the river's gentle flow. Jarek and Lyra set up a small camp, sharing warmth and quiet conversation. She spoke of her home, her family, and the culture of her people. In turn, Jarek shared stories of humans, of battles fought not just with weapons, but with courage, endurance, and morality. You are different from what I imagined, Lyra said. Humans. You fight, yes, but you protect too, you inspire. Jarek nodded. That's humanity. We endure, we fight, and we protect. We risk ourselves for others because life is worth it. And sometimes risking your life is worth everything. Days passed. With the help of the alien observers, Jarek and Lyra navigated through dangerous territory, avoiding patrols and moving toward a larger human settlement on the outskirts of the valley. Along the way, the observers shared more information about the alien hierarchy, giving Jarek insight into how to prevent future attacks and protect both human and alien lives. By the time they reached the settlement, Lyra was stronger, and Jarek had begun healing from his wounds with medgel and rest. The settlement was bustling with humans preparing for potential threats, but seeing Lyra and Jarek arrive safely brought hope and relief to everyone. Lyra's presence among humans was initially met with caution, but Jarek's actions and reputation preceded him. When the humans learned how he had risked his life, endured injuries, and protected an alien child, admiration and respect followed immediately. "You did it," Lyra said, finally smiling genuinely. "You risked everything. For me. And now, you've shown everyone that humans are special." Jarek looked at her, his chest still aching but his spirit strong. "Humans are remarkable because we endure, because we protect, because we inspire. One life saved can change many minds, and one act of courage can change history." The aliens, who had followed at a respectful distance, now approached the settlement openly. They had witnessed human valor firsthand, and their respect for humanity grew. The patrols, once relentless and aggressive, had been restrained by orders from higher authorities, who now recognized that humans could not be underestimated, not just in battle, but in morality and courage. Lyra spoke to her people through the humans, recounting everything she had seen: Jarek's bravery, his endurance, and his selflessness. Her story spread quickly, reaching alien leaders and citizens alike. The tale of a human risking his life for a young alien girl became a symbol of hope, unity, and the possibility of peace between species. In the settlement, Jarek finally allowed himself to rest fully. His injuries were healing, and his body ached, less with each passing day. Yet his mind remained sharp, thinking ahead, planning and watching over those around him. Humanity's resilience was not just physical, it was mental, emotional, and moral. Lyra, now fully recovered, stood beside him one evening, looking at the stars. You changed everything," she said softly. "Not just for me. For all of us. Humans. They are different. Brave. Strong. Worthy of respect." Jarek nodded. "Humans have always been that way. We endure, we protect, and we fight for what is right. And sometimes, risking your life is worth more than anything else." The settlement thrived over the following weeks. Human engineers helped repair alien structures, shared knowledge, and worked alongside Lyra's people. Trust grew, alliances formed, and a fragile peace began to take root. The story of Jarek's sacrifice spread across planets, a testament to human courage and morality. One evening, Jarek and Lyra stood on a hill overlooking the valley, the settlement bustling below. "We've come far," Lyra said, her voice filled with wonder. "Yes," Jarek replied, "but this is just the beginning. Humans endure, humans protect, and humans inspire, and one act of courage can change the universe." Lyra smiled. "I will never forget, and I will tell everyone what humans are capable of. You risked your life for me, and what happened next was worth every risk." Jarek placed a hand on her shoulder. "Remember this, Lyra. Humanity is more than survival. Humanity is courage, protection, and heart. And as long as we endure, we can change the galaxy, one life at a time." The stars shone brightly overhead, as if acknowledging the truth in his words. In that quiet valley, amidst humans and aliens working together, a spark of hope had been ignited. A spark that would grow, fueled by courage, trust, and the unwavering determination of a single human who had risked everything to protect another.